We are on an adventure down Highway 89A, through the Arizona Strip, past the northern rim of the Grand Canyon, and you never know what you're going to find on a desert road trip. And these images are just a few of the things you're going to see in this video, and we find something extremely rare. You got to see this coming up at the end. Welcome everyone to Weekend Escapades. Today we are on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. You can see all the beautiful trees behind me. Now the north rim is closed this time of year, but we're headed to a most interesting place, over the mountains and back into the desert, to share some interesting history and locations. Come along and join the adventure. By the way, a late Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And now that we've reached our destination, yes, that's me struggling to pay $30 for a parking permit for the Lees Ferry parking area. But it was worth it. The amazing views that are at this location were quite enough without the history. But let's get into it. Okay, we've made our way to Lees Ferry, and we're filming with a gimbal today, so kind of bear with me on some of these shots. They might be a little bit different, but should take a little bit of the shake out of the filming that we've done. So these were the cabin area of the original Lees Ferry crossing. So these have been here for quite some time. Again, sandstone construction. This was all developed, or originally, of course, Mormon pioneers made their way down here to the Colorado River. And you can see the area right over there. That's going to be, there's that gimbal action. Okay, so right over here is where the river is, and we'll share some more of the river footage. Beautiful down in that area. J. Hislop, it says right there. Try to move this a little smoother. I'm getting used to this gimbal, but it should make a little bit better shot. Smoother, and this should all be filmed in 4K, giving us a little bit better picture. Those cliffs are amazing. Almost looks like those windows originally were built to be able to shoot out of, like the gun ports they had in some of the old forts. See how the rocks are slanted back at angles, so you can turn the weapon either way. I'm sure that's what it was. They had Navajo Indian, I believe. Is that what it was? So Navajo Indian in this area, and everywhere the pioneers went, they always ran into Native Americans because, of course, it was their land originally. And when you're on somebody's land, they want you off. There might be a little bit of force used to protect the land. That part of it there's falling down a little bit. Using an external mic, hopefully that works out really good. I tested it and it sounded well, but you never know until you start uploading the video. Then over here you can see the water sparkling off in the distance. See if we can get right up to the edge. You can see where the ferry would be crossing here. It's one of the most level spots, and the water, of course, is more mellow here. So at one point, when the water was low, they used to be able to just cross here. Then the water was raised, they would use the ferry to go across. So it was in 1864, Jacob Hamlin and his Mormon missionaries were the first to cross the Colorado River at Lees Ferry, where we're at today. And Hamlin was on a mission to warn the Navajo to stop raiding Utah. So they used to come through here in this area. They would come from here to raid Utah, which isn't really that far away. In the Vermilion Cliffs, went all the way through there and then up and over the Grand Canyon, or the northern part of the Grand Canyon, the northern rim. They would have to go through there, and then the attacks up there in Utah. So in 1870 then, what happened was Major John Wesley Powell, Brigham Young, and John D. Lee led an expedition to Lees Ferry, this location, and Lee was tasked with establishing the ferry crossing. And this would have been that area. So here's the sign and a picture of the ferry. You can see this one, the ferry is showing here. I don't know what timeline that would have been, probably in like the 20s. You can see the car on the ferry there. But kind of dangerous. When they were building the dam, there was actually a couple of ferries that crashed here into each other. So really dangerous work also. But it says throughout the 1800s and 1900s, Lees Ferry was backdropped to a mix of westward expansion dreams and failed schemes. Because of its strategic location along the Colorado River, unlikely groups overlapped in these shores. Miners, traders, U.S. government scientists, church leaders, and occasional outlaws shared the trials of frontier life here. And so you can walk the river trail, and I guess you can get a glimpse of the myriad of the people and the purposes that left their marks here at Lees Ferry. Now there's another cabin over here as well that we'll take a look at. I think look at this other side, because it actually was kind of fallen down over there, as you can see. It says Lees Ferry Fort. So this was the fort. The fort was never attacked, but welcomed travelers as a short-lived trading post. In 1911, miners expanded the buildings to use it briefly as a crew mess hall. Through the 1930s, it mainly served as a home for various ferry families, USGS employees, and passing travelers. This is the bigger, you see the smaller one over there, and then this one over here is the bigger one. Now we looked at this already, but you can see this expansion over here is kind of fallen in with that same sandstone construction. It is really difficult to get to use this gimbal. Hopefully the shots are good and it's worth it. Very interesting. So like a fort, you see these aren't squared up. These are all at an angle. And that's to stay out of the line of any kind of fire and be able to fire out of the windows. So a lot of older windows are built that way in the forts that we've seen. And we have seen a lot of Mormon forts in the Southwest. My goodness, they built forts everywhere. Okay, here's the smaller house. Again, this one's locked up. Pretty good condition. I imagine they've reconstructed it a little bit. But it's a pretty old looking window. Now, I'd say a good 100 yards behind these buildings, the fort, if you will, is a little, see if I can expand in on it, right out there. Little building with a few lodge poles on it. Might be some place where they kept water or something. Let's take a closer look and see what that is. Yep. So here it is. What's left of it. Must have been some kind of storage area. There we go. You gotta be kidding me. Look at that. Never fails. Every time we film something, it's got an old set of bed springs. Even here. So funny. It's like it's a trademark. Whenever you have something that's a ghost town or an old abandoned location, you've got to have the bed springs. Kind of a trademark when you have the bed springs at every ghost town or abandoned location. So in 1871 then, John D. Lee actually established the ferry, and it was named after him. Now, he is also the one responsible, or said to be responsible. He was executed for the massacre, I should say, at Mountain Meadows. Now, you've seen that video. That's in Utah. It's called the Mountain Meadows Massacre site. So that site was actually the location. So John D. Lee, he was everywhere. I mean, he was down here. He was responsible for this ferry. Then, of course, he went back up with the militia into Utah around Cedar City and St. George area. That man traveled a lot and had a lot of activity during his lifetime until that execution that was said to take place right there at Mountain Meadows. Interesting history. So after closer observation and reading of this little sign right there, it shows that this was actually the I guess the Spencer abandoned his mining outpost during 1912. So this was the Charles Spencer Gold Mining Company office. So he abandoned this area because he had a failing effort for gold. So in 1912, cowboys, miners, and travelers occasionally camped in the empty building, and it briefly functioned as a post office. So it functioned as a post office in 1922 through though almost no mail was ever sent or delivered through this location. So kind of a failed miner's office and kind of a failed post office as well. All right, so let's head down the trail and see what other interesting buildings and locations we can find. Okay, so as we cross over the little bridge here, it's a heavy bridge. You'll see there's some houses and things off in the distance, and there should be some markers and some information along this trail, as I hope. So I'll give you a little more detailed history of Lees Ferry. There's some more houses right here. So these are right alongside the river. Imagine living here in the 1800s, right here on the Colorado River, prime property. Not only that, there's some nice rapids up the river. You can have some good times right here. Nice and hot outside, dive in the river, and get your customers that want to cross on the ferry. It's kind of a win-win. Let's look at the history right here and see what these are. So these are the USGS Guest House, Spencer Bunkhouse, U.S. Geological Survey. So that's what this is. These were built in 1950, and it was established presence here as part of the Colorado River Compact in 1922 Water Rights Agreement. And they were using a cable car to measure the river's flow, and they ensured proper water sharing between neighboring states. The USGS constructed this guest house using stones from demolished Spencer buildings. So they kind of recycled all of the stones from what was here, the pioneer buildings, and constructed these. So government offices to assure that proper water was getting from this river to all the other neighboring states. So that's when it kind of started, right? Water from this river, and dams were built. We know that water goes to California from here, all over in the West. There's been a lot of controversy over that water in droughts. These buildings, you can tell, a little newer, but still the old stone construction. And there's a window here, fairly clear. Looks like we can see inside. Let's see if we can get a visual of what that looked like. Pretty plain Jane in there. It's just an old rectangle building. There you go. That's what an old rectangle building looks like inside. Exciting. Okay, so what's over here? Now, this is first time we've been to this location. Somebody's going to know what this is, I'm sure. It's like it's got a little bit of plumbing or valves or hydraulic or water compression. What's it say right there? Carpenter. Can't quite make it out. A little bit of reflection on there. If anybody knows what this is, let me know. Obviously, the way the construction looks, heavy steel, the bolts, a lot of pressure going through here. Probably water pressure. And then there's something up there. Looks like an old steam tank where they would put water and let's go see what that is. There's a placard up there. That's our first time to this location, so I really don't know what to expect. You're seeing it with me. It's the first time we've seen it, so a lot of these things I don't know what they are. We find them along the trail here. But this was actually, maybe that's part of the mining chisel. Here we go. So there's a photo there you can see, and this is the piece that's behind me. Now maybe this up here was what we were just looking at, part of the mining chisel that made pressure out of water. So Spencer moved the boiler here to extract gold from the colorful hills that's before us. So it would have been those colorful hills right over there, right up there, looking for gold. So the pressure hoses, high pressure hoses and sediments and down a wooden flume. So just like other mining operations, it existed here as well. So this was actually what Spencer used, and this is where it was left. So it's literally in its original-ish spot. And we'll get at this placard and see. I was down by the river and I was looking up at this stuff. I didn't know the placards were actually here. So there it is, the Spencer boiler, steam engine to pump water for Charles H. Spencer mining experiments. And there's a few and some tracks there probably for hauling ore, and pipelines in the foreground ran to the boiler in 1911. So they ran water from down there up into this boiler, and this boiler then heated up the water, created pressure for being able to use water and erode those hills and get all the ore and sediments for gold. Fascinating. Didn't know that existed here. So again, getting used to this gimbal and the filming. Please let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the sound and the filming quality? Because we upgraded. We're really happy with the Canon G7X. It's a fairly expensive camera. It's kind of a vlogging camera. So we're filming now 4K on this gimbal, thinking that it takes all of the bumps and thumps out of the camera, giving you a better view. But please let me know what you think of it. And yeah, very important to me to make sure that you get good quality video. Make sure that it comes through for you. We want it to be beautiful like the locations are in person. So please let me know in the comments below what you think of it currently and how it sounds, because we're mic'd up on this as well. So it comes around the bend right there. It's so peaceful here. You can't even hear the water running. So we're going to go down the river a little bit and see where it's a little bit more rapid. As we were pulling into this location, it looked amazing. So we're going to get down there as close as we can. $30 to park here. So $30 just to enter the park and walk through here and park. It's kind of expensive. I mean, Zion is like that as well, but I think it's around 20. This location, different state, a little bit more money. So there are pieces of the mining operation of the water cannons. It's kind of hidden here in around the cactus and shrubs that are here in the desert. And that's where the rest of them are off in the distance there, you can see. Kind of fascinating. Didn't know that mining existed right here in this area. Those mountains had gold.
More than 100 years, Lonely Dale Ranch has meant different things to those who traveled here. To pioneers and missionaries, it was an isolated settlement offering small comfort during a long journey further south. To the families who lived here, the ranch was the centerpiece of daily life, requiring constant hard work to tame the rugged yet beautiful desert.
So through the gate and up the little road here, you can't drive in this part, you have to park. And then walk in probably, I don't know, 100 yards. And you can see the ranch. There's peach trees. You can already see those off in the distance. No leaves on those today. Wrong time of year. You can see the white gables of the the ranch house out there as well. Get a little closer. Just all kinds of scenery. My goodness, look at that beautiful mountains. It says right on there, gathering fruit. Those are the fruit trees. Fruit ripens seasonally from summer to fall. Exact timing for each fruit vary depending on the climate conditions. So they had apricots, peaches, plums, apples, pears, all of them, of course, in different seasons. There's a picture of a little deer trying to get himself some peaches there. So here's John D. Lee and his wife there. 1872 founding family. So Lee, of course, is the one who took control or built this ferry here. Then also lived in the ranch house. Sorry about that with the gimbal, getting used to it. So lived in this ranch house and provided. So, wow, he did a lot. And also, again, responsible for the Mountain Meadows Massacre. Held responsible for it. There was a lot of people involved in that. But he was the one that was executed for it. Right here, we're going to walk over the irrigation of the location. See here with a little bridge right below us. And sandstone irrigation. A little waterway, there are water gates to stop the water from going in. And then cisterns off there in the distance. Might be able to see it. Right there. Looks like there was almost people still living in there. Let's go walk around that ranch. Pioneer history. You can see the way they're irrigated here. So the water just runs out of the pipe and then into the holes on the ground. That's why my grandfather used to irrigate oranges in California years ago. That's what he did, was a farmer for oranges and a lot of produce, strawberries, of course, in California. But oranges were the big thing. I remember that, and the produce stand. But he always talked to me about irrigation ditches, and that's what they did, was they literally flooded the trees, opened up the water gates and flooded the orchard, and they'd close them up and then water them again when they could. Look at this old cabin. It reminds me of the one in Grafton. See how the logs are put together? A lot of farm equipment. And these ranches, as old as they are, they still look like you could live here and just have a great time. What a beautiful location. Probably like bunkhouses across the way there. Old buckboard wagon. Look at this place over here. Same construction. These logs that they built these out of literally look like they're axed, or hardly milled at all. But a lot of them were cut with axes at the end, and the way they're put together and just mudded in. That's a heavy piece of iron right there. It says right on it, 1901. So this cabin we were looking at, I was just told it is named the Polygamist Cabin, which would make sense back in the day. Polygamist Cabin. Jerry Johnson, son of former ferryman Warren Johnson, and wife Samantha, built this cabin as part of a polygamist haven. With the completion of Navajo Bridge in 1929, travelers passed by Lees Ferry and the ranch grew quiet. Johnson and his family decided it would be a perfect place to live and discreetly practice their religion and polygamy. There's a little piece of history for you. You can see this tree. I always say in these pioneer locations, if a tree could talk, the stories it would tell. This is right outside the polygamist cabin. And look at the branches and the way this tree is. Just all the years that's been here and what it is seeing right next to the cabin. This looks like the root cellar. Nowadays you call it a bomb shelter, I suppose. It'd be used as both. The 1878 root cellar, flagstone walls and roof made from earth. Partially dug out building was common for most pioneers, farms, and ranchers. So they kept a lot of their perishables in here. We get to go down in here, see what it looks like. Looks like a root cellar. Well, that thing's built tough. It would be a good bomb shelter as well. This one still has the vents to get air in there when you close it up. Keep the sun off all the perishables. Literally goes down inside. There's another one right there for air to get in. It's covered in just dirt. The earth roof. They were thinking green back then before we even thought about it. Now houses are getting built with earth on top and grass for insulation. But back then, that's just what you did. So interesting to think pioneers came all the way down here from Utah, Lees Ferry. I mean, Lee was sent down here to do this. And not only that, but I guess maybe this was after the massacre that happened, because it was quite a few years after the massacre at Mountain Meadows happened that Lee actually was tried for, the murders and things, the executions that happened there. So interesting to think in all those years after that he was down here doing this. I'm pretty sure that's the timeline. But I'll see if I can attach some history in the description of the video as well. It's almost too much to read and learn about when you're getting these videos, because we're here for the first time. It's like, oh my gosh, just pioneer history overload. So, but a beautiful location. That's really why we're here, and to give you a little bit of the history of that. But John D. Lee, responsible for much of this. So not only did they have this river with the ferry to get across, to get people, goods, wagons, everything back in the pioneer days, but you also had that confluence, which provided all that fresh water for that farm where we were. So that irrigation for that farm was off of that Paria River that came through the valley there. So a great location for travelers to come through, and a great place again for the ferry to be. And John D. Lee getting all that done. So much effort, so much manpower, pioneer power to get all of this established. But all this originally Navajo land. So probably sacred Navajo land, and a lot of Navajo history, and then later a lot of pioneer history. We're going to head to the next location and show you the bridge that was then made to, of course, take care of what the ferry did not do, and that's travel vehicles across very efficiently. So the original bridge is there, is now a walking bridge, and now we're going to head to the bridge that's currently there for the highway. Both of those are still intact, and at one time, the largest and highest bridge in the United States. One thing I want to add is that it was about 700 miles from here that you had to cross if you didn't cross here. So that's why they put the ferry here originally. It was just too far and too long to travel that extra mileage by wagon train, by horseback, to get across this area. So you've got the Vermilion Cliffs, you've got the Colorado River, you have the Grand Canyon. This area, not real accessible unless you have ferries or ways to travel and get through. Made it to Marble Canyon. Now, Marble Canyon, it hosts the bridge that was built in 1929. Now, this Navajo bridge was the largest steel bridge, the highest back then. And what has happened since then is the original bridge has turned into a walking bridge that we're going to walk across. I'm going to share with you how high this bridge is. And then the highway, of course, has a new bridge on the other side that you drive over now. But this walking bridge is very expansive. Let's take a look. So we're walking over the original Navajo bridge that actually had traffic on it, but now it is a footbridge. As you'll see, the new one of 89A off to the right. And there's some bird watchers. They're looking at California condors, and those are giant birds, America's largest birds, one of them, with a wingspan of up to 7 feet. You'll see them right here as I zoom into them. Now, this bridge is a spandrel arch bridge, and it covers the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon National Park. So this is right near Lees Ferry in northern Coconino County, Arizona. Now, this bridge goes right over Marble Canyon between Bitter Springs and Jacob Lake. This allows travelers to be able to travel into a more remote area of the Arizona Strip. Hard to believe with all these cliffs and mountains around that they find this location to be desirable. Now, the bird we're looking at here has the pink head, and the one down below has a black head. It takes 6 to 8 years for the conure to go ahead and have its plumage, I guess you would call it, the feathers, for the head to go pink instead of black. So the black head means a younger bird, and that's one right there. So the bridge we're walking on was built in 1929, and the new bridge, of course, was built in 1995, and it is off to the right. Well, that's going to do it for today from Lees Ferry and the Navajo Bridge. And until the next one, goodbye from Weekend Escapades. And in the next one, maybe I'll have this gimbal and microphone figured out.